Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out this morning. I know it's a little chilly out there this morning. We kind of got spoiled a couple weeks ago with that 75, 80-degree weather, and now we got our jackets back out. But anyways, I'm impressed with how many people brought cars this morning. That's fantastic. So I think we're all anxious to get our cars out for car show seasons again. So thank you anyway. So that brings us to today's Tread Talk. We're welcoming Danny Downs and his wife Becky. Where did Becky go? Oh, back there. And they're from Topeka, Kansas. Danny and Becky have been strong supporters of our museum. If we're here for Christmas, they might look kind of familiar to you, like Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus. So he kind of fits the part real well, doesn't he? So, but they did an amazing job with that. But Danny was telling me about these little brass miniatures that he crafts and makes. I said, what a fascinating story and what a craftsmanship. So he agreed to come tell you folks about how he creates these. He got inspired to do this through his dad, and he's carried on the tradition. And so I'm going to let Danny just talk about the cars and a little bit introduce himself and how he came to build these. And then I'm sure he'll hang around later so you can ask questions and come up and check him out in person. So let's give Danny a warm welcome.
Like he said, my name is Danny Downs. I am from Topeka, Kansas, born and raised. Graduated from Highland Park High School in 1975. Was supposed to graduate in 1974. I got dyslexia. Had to go through the fourth grade twice. Hated it. Had the same teacher. Anyway, I was considered slow, lazy, maybe even mentally, And I didn't get diagnosed with dyslexia until 1995. So I was 19 years out of high school when I finally found out why I can't read well. I can't do a lot of things. But people come to me now wanting me to do stuff that they can't do. So it's really kind of fun. My dad was a model maker. He worked at Santa Fe Railroad, and he was a draftsman for many years. And he taught me how to do drafting and stuff like that. And he also taught me how to scale. So when I make a model of something, if I don't have a particular to go off of, he taught me how to scale. And it may not be perfect, but it's usually really, really close. And so I grew up in the 60s. I was born in 1956. I grew up in the 60s, and anybody that grew up that were young back then, you would build models, whether it be ships, airplanes, cars, whatever they had. You would race slot cars. Some of the older guys are like, oh yeah, the young kids are going, don't know what that is. Or do you remember the control line airplanes? And flew not radio control, but control line, because we couldn't afford radio control. So the emphasis was on building models, and I built lots and lots and lots of car models. And as I built models, my dad scratch built, so I got to accessorizing the 1/25th scale AMT 3-in-1s. You guys know what I'm talking about, the older people, 3-in-1 kits. But I made a lot of accessories, and I made it out of brass. So we get to high school, and pretty much everybody transformed from building model slot cars and stuff to girls and cars. Okay, I was into the girls and I was into the cars, but I still wanted to build models. And so I decided to start scratch building. And so back in the probably late 70s, I started scratch building stuff out of brass. And I found out that there's, a lot more challenge. You buy a kit, nothing against kit builders. I built kits for years. Kit bashed, you know what I'm talking about, the 3-in-1 kits. You'd buy a model and it had all the extra parts, and you had little drawers that you kept your carburetors and all this other stuff in. Well, I had accessorized them for years. And for those is anybody still here build 1/25th scale models or any kind of car models and stuff? Okay, well, one of the things I found on a 1/25th scale was if you wanted a bell mouth on your 4-barrel carburetor, a 22 cartridge was perfect, and then you put a ball-peen hammer in it and you tapped it and it flared it out, and it was the perfect bell mouth for a 4-barrel carburetor. So it was like stuff like that. I made front ends, I made leaf springs, I made exhaust pipes. You had the brass stuff that you could buy, and that's what I accessorized with. So when I started scratch building, it was just a natural thing, but I wanted to build something different that nobody else would build. And for those of you that are into trains, you can buy brass locomotives and you can buy the kits and you can make everything, but they make the bells, the whistles, all of the accessories, the steam generators, the feed water pumps, all that stuff, and you put them on your kit. Well, I wanted to scratch build everything. So the first thing I did was I found a 1951 Galleon road roller. And I didn't bring it today, it's at home. But I sit down, I got the dimensions, I make my own drawings. Like I said, my dad was a draftsman at Santa Fe. I make my own drawings, and then I make everything from there. And most of the models that I make require some kind of a buck. And I looked the term up one time, and you've got a buck, a dollar. You've got a buck deer. You've got, I think there was like 10 or 15 different meanings to the word buck. But one of the meanings is a buck that you use to form metal. Okay, so what I would do is I would go get the dimensions. Then I either take copper and or brass, whichever. Copper forms a lot easier than brass does. You heat it up, you quench it, and it goes right back to its natural state. So it's pretty easy to form. So when I build a model, like the street sweepers here, everything that's got a curve to it, a shape to it, has a buck. So I hand make a buck, I form the metal, and then you put everything together, and then you figure out the detail, how you're going to make the gear shifts, the steering wheels, made fire extinguishers, and all kinds of the different accessories. And that's where I love to do it. It gets into fun. It's a lot of work. This is the last one that I just finished up. I've got 4 years in that model. Now that's hobby time, okay? And it doesn't do anything but just set. But it's something that I wanted to build. I built it. There's one other Austin Western that I wanted to build. I was fascinated by that. I seen that in Minden, Nebraska. I went up, I got the dimensions off of it, and I was able to make it. And I'm fascinated with it because when I was a kid, street sweepers were always big in the front, narrow in the back. And the Austin Westerns are big in the back and narrow in the front. And that fascinated me. So after I get the third one done, I will probably have the world's largest collection of brass miniature street sweepers in the world. I'm not sure about that, but so anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my mic up here and I'm going to explain some stuff. This is just standard copper like you would buy at any hobby shop, and it's a 32nd of an inch thick. And you cut out a piece. Once you form your buck, and the only reason this is tool dipped is because I take this to schools and I've done coppersmith demonstrations and stuff like that. And once you start forming your brass or your copper, it will take shape, and once it gets hard, it'll get work hardened, and all you have to do is heat that copper up, quench it, and it goes back to its natural state. Now, copper is a natural metal. Brass is not. Brass is nickel and tin and a bunch of other stuff. So once you get this into shape, you cut it out and polish it, and you have a fender. Okay, so that's how everything is formed. That's the reason it takes so long to make all of this stuff. And you go off a scale, but at this scale, you can't, because in reality, this fender, I think it looks pretty good, but in real life, it would be 1.5 inches thick. You know, that'd be a pretty tough fender, you know. That's the kind of thing you don't want to run into people with. So anyway, it's a long, arduous task. I have a special annealing stand at my thing where I have water, I have a torch, I have a striker, I have everything that I need. I can work it, and it just, you know, and it just goes from there. So each one of these is, like I said, is hand formed. And then you get to the detail part. This is a 1936 Ford flathead V8. There's 111 pieces in this, okay? And what it's going to go in, like I said, I only build something that's unusual. 36 Ford trucks are as common as shovels. There's a lot of them around. But a 1936 Ford cab over, they only know of one that exists. And my dad bought me a Ford book. And in 1935, 36, and 37, if you wanted a cab over Ford, what you did was you bought a new Ford, and then they sent it off to a place called Transportation Engineering. They raised the cab up 18 inches, and they moved the cab forward 27 inches. So my wife back there has a brother. He loves to find things on the internet. I said, find me one of these. And Farmer Branch, Texas, 508 miles from my house. And I got in the car and drove down to see this thing. It's restored. It's in a museum down there. If you guys know what Ward Mead Park is in Topeka, it's kind of a deal like that down there. And they have this truck. They have a truck down there. So I had already made my drawings. I had made my own drawings. I draw these to scale. And I drove down there, and I pulled the dimensions off that truck, and I was right on the money on it. It was really cool. Well, the guy was so nice. He said, as much trouble as you go through with these models, he said, you need to ride in this truck. So he pulled it out of the museum and gave me a ride in it. Now, a 36 Ford cab over doesn't have a whole lot of room, and I'm not a little bitty guy. And it's kind of like having a 36 Ford Enema. This thing, I was in there, my head's cocked over to one side, and I was in the truck. So we went out for a pretty nice cruise in the truck. We get back to the museum. He said, come over here, you got to drive it. And I actually got to drive it. Now, stop and think about this. How many of you here, you guys know what a flathead Ford V8, you know where the distributor is. Okay, the hood on this is 11 inches long. And this cab does not tilt. Okay, so when you sit in this truck and you give it gas, the carburetor is right under your foot feet. Okay, the gear shift, they have a special mechanism that they made that goes back to the gear shift. It's very interesting to see how they did this. So anyway, I think what happened is that the few people that actually bought these trucks, I mean, I have a lot of pictures of them, but they're just not around. But I think the problem is they were so difficult to work on that they went to the junkyard, and all you had to do was buy a 37 or 36 Ford hood off of a truck and lower the cab back down, and you had a standard truck, because I think they were just unbelievably hard to work on. So anyway, that's kind of some of the stuff that I do. I will go to extraordinary lengths to find something that I want, make models of it, and go from there. This is a 1945 Biedermann Model P1. This is not done. There was only 300 of these made. Most people have never heard of a Biedermann truck. And they made 300 of them. And this particular crane sat down at Catch's in Topeka. And they had done some extreme modification on it. This has got a 6-cylinder Hercules in it and all of the pieces and what have you. I just haven't finished it. This was the difficult part. This was extremely difficult. This is an interesting thing. You guys can come up later. Here's the block, the hook and stuff that goes off the front of it. Anyway, I had several models. And I don't know if any of you in Topeka, did you know Myron Catch? No? Okay. He was just kind of an old cantankerous guy. And I took some models down one day and I showed him what I did. And I said, I would like to get some dimensions off of your crane and take some pictures of it. And he's like, no. And I said, you don't care, no, or no, I can't? No, you can't. He says, I don't want you to go out there and take pictures of it. I don't want you to get dimensions of it. And when you drive by, I don't even want you to look at it. That's the honest to God's truth. He told me that, and I'm like, okay, you know. So anyway, I went ahead, made a rough drawing of what it is, and I kind of started the crane because I had another Michigan crane I could copy off of, but not the truck. So, excuse me, once I figured out what car he drove, I went down there one Saturday, and his car was gone, and I went in, and his son was there, Herschel. And I showed the stuff to Herschel, and Herschel's like, my God, go out and get whatever you want off of that truck. Take all the pictures you want of it. And he said, when you get done, come see me. I've got the manual. Now, all of a sudden, I went to having no information to having a whole bunch of information, and it really works out really good. And I was talking about being dyslexic in school. I hated research. I don't like to do research unless it's something that I'm interested in. And so when it comes to researching this stuff, it makes it really cool. So anyway, I've just got a lot of stuff up here. I have had several articles. I belong to the ATHS, which is the American Truck Historical Society, and they've done several different articles on me and the trucks and the different stuff. I am also very interested in steam locomotives, and my grandson is interested in steam locomotives. This is a Shutterfly book that my wife and I did for my grandson, and it has taken this steam locomotive for non-running up to running. We had to reflue it, and we didn't do this all by ourselves. We had a lot of help, and we got the thing, and he's actually got to run the steam locomotive. He's got to fire the steam locomotive. So this is kind of a book on this. And then we collect kiddie rides. And this is another book that we did. We've got 7 kiddie rides in our house, along with traffic lights, probably 250 or 300 signs in our house. You name it. If it don't need to be in a house, we got it.
Does your wife still love you?
Ask her. She's sitting over there. No, she's really good about it. I had a chance I went out to work. Did any of you know about the C&H Railroad in Topeka? The little 12-inch gauge, I think it's 12-inch gauge. Okay, Steve Crayhew had, and Mike Hawkins had this kiddie ride. And hang on a sec. That's what it looked like when we got it. Okay? And so I did some welding on a tender for him. I didn't tell you that. I've been a welder most of my life and a car painter. So anyway, we took it from the blue. This is what it looks like today. And I made a Thomas face for it. I don't know whether I should have, but I made a Thomas face out of fiberglass. So if you want to look through these when you come up here, it kind of gives you an idea of just the different things that we've done and whatever. But anyway, I graduated high school and I went to Votech in Topeka, which was Collier Votech back then. Now it's Washburn Tech. And I graduated auto body. And I painted cars for about 5 years. And I still paint. I love to paint. I'm going to bring one of the things down that I painted down here. It's a little miniature Divco that we have. And I'm going to bring it down and put it in the museum here before too long. But I still help paint cars. I still help restore cars. And so doing this kind of stuff has made it pretty easy. But I got tired of breathing to paint, and I went to Topeka Foundry and was able to get a job down there as a painter. And so I started painting down there, and I have been down there. Next Wednesday, I'll have 46 years at the foundry. And I was foreman, welder. I'm semi-retired. I still go down there and work part-time. I also teach out at Votech. I teach welding. And then I help a friend of mine, Todd Williams. Some of you I know Todd in Topeka. And he restores cars, and I help him do whatever it is. So, but anyway, that's just kind of the stuff that I do. The stuff is extremely small. I showed you some of these. I'll let you, if you want to pass that around, if you can even see it. There's a 7/1000 drill bit in there. And everybody asks me, how do you hold the 7/1000 drill bit? If you don't know what a pin vise is, they go to 0. I turned different things that clip up in here so they don't hurt you, and you just go down. And believe it or not, that they cut wonderful. I called McMaster Carr, and those drill bits were $1.54 a piece. And I ordered 30 of them. And I thought, man, because I use them not a lot, but when I do need them, I have them. So a week later, I called back, and I said, I want another 30 of them drill bits. And in the book, they're the same price. And she said, well, the price is wrong on that. And I said, I thought that was awful cheap. I said, what is it now? And she said, they were $15.89 a piece. And she asked me, she said, how many did you get? And I said, I got 30 of them. She says, you got lucky because the price was wrong on it, $1. Then so I was able to get them. But yes, they break very easy. I make most of my own tools. This is just a deal that I turned out of stainless down at work. It's got holes in it, and all it's for is making steering wheels. Works fantastic at making steering wheels. There's different times where I need to get into a place or sockets or whatever it is. I will take Allen wrenches or Allen screws, and then I turn the outside of them down and use the inside as a socket. So I make my own little tools. I make a lot of different things along with all the bucks and the different things to fabricate this stuff. So if you guys want to come up, I would ask that you don't touch. When I did the street sweepers, I don't know how to explain this. This motor right here, I think it's still wired. I don't know. If not, I got to wire it. Anyway, I put spark plug wires on it. And I went to Joann's because I was needing some thread for the cables on this thing. And I happened to have this in my pocket. I make boxes. I make little boxes. I make them out of paint sticks because everything is so small. Well, anyway, this lady asked me what I was needing and stuff. And I took this little motor out, and I showed it to her, and she took her nail, and she went in and she scooped all of the plug wires off of it. I'd made it out of copper. I mean, the plug wires out of copper. She just looked at it and went like that, and then she looked at me and she goes, I shouldn't have done that, should I? Okay, well, it's too late. You already did it, you know. So anyway, I got to the point where when I made the brushes for the street sweepers, I can make them out of copper, but if somebody touches them, then they're going to bend. So in the street sweepers, the hair is all from my children and my grandchildren's hair. And I made it so that it looks like a brush, it works like a brush, and so it's kind of fun. So do you have any questions? I was going to get into scale. Go.
Do you bolt all the fenders and all the pieces together?
It's either bolted or soldered. Yeah, I use lead solder. Well, it's not lead anymore, but it's either soldered, but I can take each one of those apart. They're engineered so I can take them all apart. So. Go ahead.
Are you the only Downs that now work in the bigger shops?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you? You remember Shakey's Pizza Parlor? Okay. Yeah. Well, my grandfather played the banjo out there. He worked at the shops. Red Downs. Yeah. Yeah. He was out there. So yeah.
How many average parts are in some of those?
You know, I kept track of one of them. It's hard to keep track of all of them. This little motor, the little flathead V8 has, that's what you asked was how many parts, right? The little flathead V8 has 111 pieces in it. And I told the guy a while ago it's actually got 110 because one of the plugs fell out. But I found, you don't have a whiteboard here. I found that it's like doing the cylinder heads on this. If you take a bigger piece and you go in and lay your head out and drill your holes, they're so small it works really good. If you try to cut the piece out and drill the holes, it won't work because so the easiest thing for me to do is to drill all the holes, lay the holes out, and do all of that, then go in there and cut it down to size, and it comes out working pretty good. And the other thing I was going to bring up is scale. It's like the scale on the fenders. You know, it's 1.5 inches thick in my scale. But I don't put mirrors and I don't put little stuff like that because it's so fragile. At my scale, 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. So 1/2 inch or 1/8 of an inch is now 6 inches. 1/16 of an inch is 3 inches. So half of that, 1/16, you got 1/32, and that's 1.5 inches. Now, most mirrors on a truck are usually 3/8 rod. Well, now you're down to a 1/64th, and they're so fragile. You know, you're at a 1/64th or 1/28. I can get the material, I can make the mirror, and I can put it on, but it's so fragile that if you sneeze, it's going to bend it. So there are certain things that you just can't do. If you notice this Model A fender here, the crease is accentuated. It's more than there is on a Model A because it's hard to see. So if you don't make it deeper than what the actual one is, you can't see it. So sometimes you have to kind of bend the rules just a little bit in order to make things work. So, any more questions? I got plenty of answers. If not, I could even make stuff up. Yes, sir.
Do you ever offer anything for sale? Or?
No, because it takes so long to, you know. I've got probably $25 worth of material, but I've got a ton of hours in it. After they did the first article on me, I got a call from Tim Allen, Tool Time Tim, and I had to call him back, and we talked for about 15 minutes. He wanted to know why I build them so small and why do I make them out of brass. And I just told him just for the, just the challenge more than anything. And he wanted to know how many I make. I said, I just make one. I don't want to make multiples because it's not any fun. You know what I mean? I like to see if I can do it once and then be done with it. And then the other thing is I do, hang on just a second. I took that picture out for you, didn't I? Okay. Yeah, this is a friend of mine, and he brought me this picture, and he had a 28 Model A, and I don't know whether you know about Model A's, but 28 Model A's with these long running boards in the rear fenders are pretty unusual. Well, Todd had come up with, he had the truck, he had the running boards, and he had the fenders. And he gave me this picture, and he says, can you reproduce this bed? I want to make a wrecker. Can you reproduce the bed? And so my youngest stepson and I sat down and made a bed for it. And I took along this edge here, I took 2x1 rectangular angle, okay? And I wanted it to look like the sides of the thing were stamped. So I laid that flat, and then I bent. You guys, I don't know. If you roll something the easy way, if you roll something the hard way, then you're doing it this way, okay? So I took the tubing, and we had a roller down at work, and I was able to roll that flat tubing the hard way, and I got the contour of the cab, and then we made the whole frame, made the ribs, and then we inset the sheet metal 3/16 of an inch. So when we get all done, people have come up and asked it looks like it's a factory-made bed because it looks like it's been stamped. And it came out really, really good. And I just like a challenge. I love it when somebody says, well, I don't think you can do that. Well, maybe we can't, or maybe we can. So,
Talk about the half track.
My dad was stationed in World War II in Dibrugarh, India, and he was in the 758th Railroad Battalion. And they had a half track, and it had a boom on the front of it, and they used it to lift the box cars or the engines or whatever they had to do over in India. And he said a lot of the times the half track wouldn't run. So he said when the half track wouldn't start, we would bring in the locals and they would bring in elephants. And they used block and tackle and raised the cars up with that. So I told him, I said, you've driven a half track before? And he says, I've driven one a lot. Well, there's a guy in Topeka that had a half track. And I told Ed, I says, I want to drive the half track. And so he started the thing up. He said, there's a field over here. He said, go drive it in the field all you want. He said, it has no brakes. You won't need any. And I'm like, okay. And the only way you know that you're in a track vehicle, because on a half track, if you didn't know, the differential's right here behind the cab. Okay, so you have the sound of the tracks moving, and that's the only thing you know. And if you didn't know, if you lose a track or both tracks, you engage the front wheels and you can drive it without any tracks. So it's pretty neat. Well, anyway, Dad wanted to build this, and so he made this. This is 1 inch to the foot aluminum. Both of these, all of the models that he made were 1 inch to the foot, and he made lots of them. We've got probably about 20 or 25 models that he's made, and he made bridges. He made all kinds of a bulldozer. My brother has it out in California. Drawbridges, all kinds of stuff, and he liked to build 1 inch to the foot bigger stuff, and so that's what he did. And but that's the story behind the half track. So, and it does run. I don't have the cord to run it, but it does run. So anyway, most of the models that he didn't run, but so that's, like I said, that's how I got into model making, was him, and then it just transferred to me. And so anyway, any more questions?
Is your grandson making them?
No, he does not. He's not interested in models, but he loves the steam engines. And if any of you know the 4014 that comes through, the big boy that comes through, Union Pacific sacrificed the Challenger to get the big boy running. And him and we went down to Boone, Iowa and worked. I know you guys don't know numbers, but it's 8419. It's a Chinese steam locomotive that they bought new in 1988. They wanted the last steam locomotive that was built. And it's in Boone, Iowa. It needed to be reflued. And so March of 22, my grandson and I went down and helped with that. So we still go down and work in Boone. Well, now we go to Silvis, and the 3985, the Challenger, and 5511, UP donated to him. And so he's not interested in the models, but he loves trains. So at 16, we go down and work on that. And he's actually fired 8419, and he's also throttled it. So at 16 years old, it's kind of for a kid, So he's in seventh heaven, and I enjoy being able to work with my grandson. I mean, what more? I've got 5 grandkids. I've got 2 8-year-olds and 2 4-year-olds and a 16-year-old. So, and I've got wonderful stepchildren and a wonderful wife, and I don't know, it all works out together. But like I said, when I wanted to go to Farmers Branch, Texas, she's like, okay, have a good trip. Or sometimes she'll go along with me or whatever it is. She's been down to Silvis and worked on the steam locomotives. And so I just have a great time. I'm semi-retired and working and playing and having fun. So, and even get to work on some people's car out here. So, but if you would like, you can come up and look, and I'll answer any questions I got. It's just a matter of sitting down and just making pieces. If you want to know how I do the engine, I will go through and I lay out the head bolts. It's got the same amount of head bolts as a 36 Ford. And I put my wires in and I solder them in, and they're long. And then I just go in and give them a haircut. And it makes the head bolts down to the right. Then I put the plugs in, make them a little longer. So what you're looking at is a piece of wire. It is not a bolt, but you can't, if you've got that good of eyes, then hats off, So anyway. Okay. Well, come on up and look if you guys want, and we'll go from there. Thank you.